Hey guys, Seth here. Figured I'd give you a little different format today with more of a Q&A just to get things back on track. I know I'd said in my last video that I really wanted to get going again right after the 4th of July, and that just happened to coincide with 50 billion things happening all at once. Starting with my trip to New York that was 13 hours up, 13 hours back in the car with the dog, busting my ankle chasing him when my friend let him out. A big festival here. I had to have multiple car appointments, including last week when a lady hit my car with a shopping cart. So now I got to get a dent fixed. It's over $1,000. Had the vet appointment, and then my dog got bit on the leg this week. So we got another vet appointment coming up, along with oil changes and all the other stuff. And every time I get ready to do a video, something else pops up. So at this point, knowing that I don't have 7 hours to sit down and edit, I was like, hey, just send me some questions. I popped a link in my Insta and in the Discord and had some people just throw me some questions and we'll go through them. And first question, when do you recommend starting Tren? This was asked by Eric. Of course, we can't have a Q&A without a Tren question. That's how it is. It's bodybuilding, duh. So my biggest thing is don't start Tren unless you're a couple cycles in, you know how your body responds to testosterone and other things. And you're at least 25 years old, so it doesn't fuck with your brain too much. Because we already know your brain's not fully developed until 25, so doing Tren before that is just a recipe for disaster. But I would say don't be using it unless you're in a deep deficit and you're on a cut. It won't make a big difference anyway, unless you're already pretty lean. So there's no use to have that toxic compound in your body unless you're gonna do a contest prep or you're getting lean in that regard. Question number 2 from Kendra. What's your dog's name? He's beautiful. The puppy is Axel. That's his adopted name. His first owner shoved him out of the car on the side of the road, so I don't know what his actual name was. But I got him from the shelter, and actually next week's gonna be his 1-year anniversary with me. He just turned 5 a couple weeks ago. But yeah, once he got settled in and everything, his coat improved, he put on weight, and he's been fine ever since until he got in a scuffle with a dog yesterday and got his leg bit. What's your other job? You mentioned you run out of time making videos some weeks. From Arch. Well, I work physical therapy. I've been practicing 8 years now. So injury related questions, go ahead and ask them. That's fine too. Obviously, I'm not doing hands-on stuff with you, but I can give you general answers or suggestions on things. I also umpire baseball on the side. That's my second job, and then I do a little bit of rover here and there where I walk other dogs for people or babysit puppies. And then obviously we have the coaching on the side also. So a lot of things going on, a lot of moving pieces from time to time. Do you have a girlfriend? By Alexis. I said I'd answer every question, but no, I don't. It's just me and the dog. Does your husky talk?
Run, run, run. Run, run. You'll go outside in a minute. I don't want to hear it. I'm not going to argue with you. You're going to go outside in a minute, but chill the fuck out. You want to go? Then go. Let yourself out. Go. Go.
Yeah, he does. He's not as bad as a lot of the ones on YouTube, but if he wants to go for a car ride or go to the dog park, we're going to sit there and argue back and forth for 5 or 10 minutes. Sometimes I'll just shut the door on him and let him calm down because he's just going to get up in my ear and keep going at it with me over and over again. It's funny sometimes, other times like it's a little annoying when I'm trying to work on things, but typically if we've gone to the dog park or he's been able to go on a ride by 2 o'clock on the weekends, he's fine. And during the week, he goes to daycare. So he has to go for a car ride and play with his friends. So he's fine then. I just have to wrestle him before we go to the gym. That's our thing every night. If I don't wrestle him or walk him, then he starts blocking the door and like going side to side with me. So I can't get around him until I wrestle him and then he chills out. But that's our thing. Next is one of 2 questions from Trout. He says, here's a good question. How about coming to terms with the consequences of gear usage? It's a deep question for one of the trolls on Discord. But I wouldn't say it's more like coming to terms as like, if you're thinking about doing PEDs, you should already know the pharmacology, what you're doing, do the research beforehand before jumping into it, instead of jumping into it and then dealing with consequences afterwards. You should have thought out all the risks, the benefits, and monitor your health as you're on them in the first place. But unfortunately, a lot of guys just jump on, don't do the research. They're just like, hey, my buddy had this. He sold it to me, told me to take this much, and they just go ahead and just shoot it right in themselves. Which I never understood that, because you got people that are afraid of other shots out there, and they'll do all the research in the world, looking in all these, whether it's conspiracies or medical papers and all that about certain things, but then they'll take a compound that their buddy gives them and be like, all right, yeah, let's stick this in my ass. Let's go. I never understood that. But if you're gonna be jumping on this, or jumping on PEDs, period, you should be doing the research ahead of time. So Trout had a second question. I think you should discuss why guys don't take their health seriously, and talking about how you personally deal with the negative consequences of gear use. Kind of along the same lines as that last question, but I think a lot of it's just the education and not being a numbskull. Because a lot of young guys do think they're invincible. So if you're under the age of 25, it's really not the best to be on them. We know you need to have a more mature brain, and that happens after the age of 25. So I think a lot of guys before the age of 25 don't think about it, and then they have a little health scare here or there, or something comes up on blood work that looks out of whack, and it kind of opens their eyes, because I think it's not going to happen to me. I'm invincible. And I've been there too. When I had a concussion, I remember I was umpiring baseball. I had a really bad concussion. I was like, oh, it'll never happen to me. I got one. I was like, all right, I'll be back next week. Actually, I thought it was going to be 2 days I was out. And I remember the doctor's office. And I was like, all right, test me Wednesday. Came in Wednesday, absolutely flunked every test. Flunked all the tests for about 5 weeks before I could come back. So sometimes you got to get that kick in the butt and that wake-up call on, hey, I'm not invincible, and things can happen. So it's the best to actually monitor your health and be on top of things. Bastion asks, what keeps you going? Since Bastion asked this question, my answer is going to be, your mom keeps me going. He's a troll. Training frequency related question. Are you a fan of the science-based 2 to 3 times a week per muscle group, or subscribe to the more bro style of training, hitting it once a week? Well, in my opinion, the bros do hit it twice a week. Because you think push-pull legs, rest, push-pull legs are what kind of the bro split is. But I think what Pylar was getting at here was more talking about the bro training being that low volume, high intensity, like Dorian style of training. So I'm more about hitting each part multiple times a week, splitting up your volume. Because the research does show you need 48 to 72 hours between sessions hitting a certain muscle group for it to recover. So after 48, 72 hours, that's 2 to 3 days, you should be able to hit that body part again. Some of the guys do 3 times a week, low volume, swear it's the greatest thing ever, which we've been over in a previous video, how it really works for beginners, but after a certain point, you really do need to add a little more volume to it. But the big thing I think people mix up with the high volume, they assume the intensity is not there. You're still keeping your intensity high. You're just stopping shy of failure instead of going to complete CNS failure. You go more on your mechanical, your form failure. Sorry, form is what I was thinking of. So like you're doing a bicep curl and all of a sudden you can't quite get it all the way up. Those reps are starting to get real short. You start getting about 75% in the range, or you start getting stuck, about halfway. And I would say if you're getting to a point where you can only do half a rep, all right, call it good. But what the hit guys want is you to push past that point of fatigue and try to really, or failure, past the point of failure, and have somebody else assist you, training partner, or do a drop set or something else, rest pause. They're all fine. Like, those are fine things to have in your program, put in smartly. So I like doing the high volume approach. It's more like a Renaissance periodization format, I guess, because I scale up the volume up for 5 to 6 weeks. And that last week in the block, when I feel like, hey, I need to start taking a deload pretty soon, I'll try to add some of those intensity builders at the end of some of the major lifts for that week only. And then we drop the weights deload, and then slowly build volume back up. So you get one really easy week, another pretty lower volume, easier week, low volume. You're still keeping the intensity up the next week, but then that volume starts to scale again after you bring it back down. Got a question from JC. Why beginning lifters should worry more about lifting the weight instead of the science? Quotations, most optimal, most effective form, etc. based working out. So I think what he's saying is, should beginners focus more on lifting the weight instead of the science? I think that's the gist of it. But I'd say they should definitely worry about the science somewhat, but not overdo it. Like, you don't need to go as in-depth as Jeff Nipples does, with the reps in reserve and all this other stuff. I never liked that approach myself. I tried doing one of Jeff's programs, and everything was like RIR of like his RPE 7. But the problem with RPE scale too is some people judge it on 0 to 10. In the therapy cardiac rehab world, it's 8 to 20, the RPE scale. And industrial rehab uses that also. And then I know like John Meadows and some other guys, they would go 0 to 10, but you could go past failure. So 10 would be like, hey, I can't get a full rep anymore with good form, but you go up to 12, 14, blah, 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 depending on your intensity builders on top of it. Jeff, I think, would keep you only 10 was like his max intensity. But a lot of his stuff was like 3 reps shy and all that. And I'm like, I don't get a good feel for it myself. And as a beginner, you should be working on building a baseline of strength anyway. So I've always recommended, if you've never hit the gym before, you've never lifted a weight, anything, probably starting out with something really basic, more a power building, powerlifting style, just to get the basic movements down. You know, get the big 3 down first few months in the gym, and then expand out from there, because I think that base strength is really a big thing to build off of. But at the same time, you don't want to just straight turn into a power fatty and only do that for the rest of your career. After you get the newbie gains, you can start doing more bodybuilding style, intermediate kind of training, start to scale the volume up a little bit. So as a beginner, you don't need as much volume to grow. You can literally just sneeze on a weight and it'll grow. The next question is from a much bigger YouTuber and Instagram influencer than myself, Jackson Tippett. I can throw his bio up on here in a second. But his question is, what do you think of T3 and how would you use it? Myself personally, I've never used it, and I don't think it's a huge necessity. My biggest thing is I don't really want to screw with too many organ systems all at once, especially when you're taking other things. And I've always seen good enough results from just using the basic stuff, like including Tren, obviously. But this is thinking in a contest prep scenario. If you're up there in the higher levels, you feel like you need to run it to get lean, then go ahead, by all means. But the problem with T3 is it can also chew through muscle a lot faster, especially if you're already in a deficit and you're on Tren and all that, which does have an effect on the T3 and T4. Dr. Todd goes into that a lot more in a video on his channel. I can throw that in the comment section below if anybody wants to see that. It might have actually been on Paul's podcast one time. I'd have to double check. But he went into the actual like mechanism behind it. I don't remember all of it off the top of my head. But I have seen the protocols for it. Like, obviously, it's kind of standard across the board. They usually start, the smart ones start at 20 micrograms and increase gradually up to like 80 at the max. I think the safest dose is between 40 to 60 is what most people do. And there's always been that 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. People do to not burn out the beta receptors. But as I said, that'd be something you'd have to research a little more if you want to run it. I've never really recommended people do it. But I know at the higher levels, sometimes guys feel like it's necessary. And April Davis Fit asks, why don't you do more workout videos? Well, I don't like somebody following me around to videotape me anyway. I could ask somebody to, but I really like going to the gym on my own. I put my headphones on, I got the noise cancellation, I'm blasting metal music. I'll even throw my gym playlist in the description for you guys. It does have 23,000 downloads on YouTube Music. I didn't realize it was that popular till the other day. You can't even really see it. Like, it's kind of hidden in the menu. And I think you got to go to like your playlist, and then it shows what your public ones are. And I clicked on it, And apparently it's pretty popular. It's got 23,000 downloads on one app that's not as big as Spotify, so it must be all right. Uh, but yeah, I get in the zone, and I really hate stopping to have to cut the music off, and it gets me out of that rhythm. I was a closer in high school, like in baseball, so you think that guy comes out firing, pissing fire and just there to kill the weights. That's kind of my style. I like being like super intense and just shutting everything out. People think I'm like a straight up rage monster sometimes. Like I look like I'm gonna rip somebody's head off, but that's just me taking the aggression out on the weights, and that's when I get the best workout. I can't just like go through the motions and just kind of, I don't know, like some people can go at it at more of a moderate tempo. I think of it like, the best way I can think about it is like the baseball analogy. Your starting pitchers, they can go 75% for, 6-7 innings and straight up dominate and be fine. Whereas me, I can't do that. I'm not wired that way. I got to be all in the zone. So I have put a couple small training videos up on like the TikTok, and I think it's somewhere on my Instagram. I have thought about trying to get a few in there. So I think maybe like during deload weeks or something where I'm not like straight up trying to kill myself, I probably could produce some videos for workouts. But I'm more than happy, like if, your client working me or something like that, we can go over videos of you training and all that. And I'll give you pointers and tips on what we need to fix, little form tweaks to get things to really come up. But I'm not the best at wanting to take myself while I'm working out. And I think that does it for the first Q&A. Hope you like the thumbnail. I added the dog one because I had a bunch of dog questions, so we can continue with that title if you like having the little husky theme to it too. I don't mind answering those questions in these kind of videos. On the more informative ones, I'll try to keep a lot of the random dog and personal things out of it. I try to keep them more concise and flowing. But if you got any questions, just drop them below, and I'll have my Instagram linked at the back half of the little title card there. But hope you guys have a good one, and we'll see you later.